Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am Jasmine and this is Jazz with a Z. It has been forever, but I am coming back with another recipe. This recipe is something yummy, it's something simple, it's quick, and it's Nigerian and vegetarian. Today we are going to make Nigerian beans. Let's get right into it. Alright, so like I said, this recipe is very simple, it's very easy, it doesn't call for a lot of ingredients at all. So to get started, what you're going to need is some tomatoes. It calls about I usually 4 to 5 tomatoes, 1 bell pepper. I found a tip that if you use a bell pepper that's a little old but it's still good, it kind of locks in and has a lot of flavor. So I prefer to use one that is a little old and wrinkled because the flavor is very good there. You need 1 red onion, a couple cloves of garlic, and 1 to 2 habanero peppers. And then we'll just need some beans. These are Nigerian beans. They look just like black eyed peas, so if you can't get a hold of these beans, I will use black eyed peas. And then the next ingredient is going to be some red palm oil. You can get this at any Nigerian store or international market. If you can't find red palm oil, then you can always use a vegetable oil and it will pretty much be the same thing. And then we also have various spices that I will show as we add them into the stew. Alright, so that's our ingredients. Let's get our blender. Alright, so I just measured out about 3 cups of beans. I went ahead and already picked them, so I make sure they're thoroughly washed. After they're washed, I'm going to add them into my pressure cooker and cook them for about 25 minutes. So let's just go ahead and get these beans washed. My beans are washed. I'm going to go ahead and add them to my pressure cooker. I forgot to mention this in the beginning of the video, but I don't always measure when I cook. I do know that this was about 3 cups of beans. I went ahead and measured 4 cups of water. I don't know how much water I'm actually going to use, so after I pour it in, I'll go ahead and tell you guys. Because with this recipe, you don't want the beans to be watery, so you just want just enough water to get the beans covered so they don't burn while they're cooking, but you don't want to add a lot of water. So I added about 2 cups of water. So we got the beans in a pot, just enough water to cover it. We're going to cook this on bean setting here, and then we're going to add 25 minutes to it, and we're going to start that. So while that's cooking, we're going to get our tomato mixture going. I'm not making as much beans as I normally do, so I'll probably end up using more like 3 to 4 tomatoes, but we're going to see. But everything else is going to stay the same. Okay, now that that's all blended together, we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to fry the stew. My beans are still going. I normally will wait about 10 minutes before the beans finish to go ahead and fry the stew. But to fry that stew, you're going to need, depending on how much you're going to do, it takes about 1-2 cups of palm oil. And palm oil starts as a solid, and then it obviously heats up and it becomes an oil, a liquid. But that I eyeball it. I just have learned to see how much it takes to get to that it's going to need for the stew. I'm going to show exactly how much is in the pot, and then how much oil is in there before I start frying it. That way you kind of see what I'm talking about, because I go based off of the size of the pot versus how much stew that I have. Okay, so I have about 15 minutes left on my beans. We're going to go ahead and get the stew started. Like I said, we're going to take about 1 to 2 cups of palm oil. And to be honest, the first time that I had palm oil was like when my husband would cook for me. Before we were married, we would hang out, he would make stew and the palm oil taste at first, like I didn't like it because it's very strong. But now, you know, I always cooking with it. I'm so used to it. I love the taste, and it really does give like the recipes a good flavor. And at hindsight, same reaction to the amount of oil that I'm cooking with right now. You might like, oh my God, her arteries are about to be clogged. It's a lot of oil. I know it's a lot of oil, but you need it. So you just deal with it. You just cook with this oil and you enjoy the oil taste in the stew. So I used about 1.5 cups. I didn't need a full 2 cups of oil. Just because I keep forgetting I'm not making as much beans as I'm normally used to making and cooking. So I'm only have about 1.5 cups of oil in here. And I don't forget about the amount of oil. Like once you put the beans in there and you fry the stew, it's really okay. I know like the first times I was cooking Nigerian meals and using palm oil and watching recipes, I'm like, oh my God, that is so much oil. But it's honestly, it evens out. I don't know how the food does it, but it does even out with the oil. So when you're cooking with palm oil, because it goes into a salad, you put heat on it, obviously it's going to reduce, but you want to, it's called bleaching, so you want to wait until the oil turns dark and it gets really hot. So that's when you want to wait until add your stew. So we're going to, once this bleaches and it's dark in color, we're going to add the stew in there and fry it and reduce the water. You'll see you don't want the water from the tomato. You want to fry that all out and get that reduced. And then we're going to add our beans and then season. We don't season it till the end when you're cooking with Nigerian food, just because of the water that's in it. You kind of want to let that all cook out before you season. So we'll go ahead, like I said, we'll add the stew in just a minute. Okay, so our oil is good and hot now. We're going to go ahead and add the tomato mix. You want to be very careful because our oil is quite hot, so it could splash back a little bit. Now we're just gonna fry this stew. And you see how it's like the oil is on top and it's separated, like oil and water. The stew will come together, right? And then the oil will become more incorporated. That's how you're gonna know that your stew is done. And I'm calling it stew because that's what they call it, stew. So we're gonna add the beans to the stew. Okay, so our stew has been frying for some time now, and you can see how the consistency has changed already because the water is reducing. So it's not as separated, and the stew is stirring together well. So at this point is when I'm gonna start adding some of our seasonings to the stew. So we're gonna get started with some old-fashioned salt. Add my salt, and because I'm adding the beans, like I can over salt the stew just a little bit. Then I'm gonna add, I have this Jamaican curry seasoning. I don't think that in like a traditional Nigerian making beans they're gonna add this, but I added to mine, so it's my own little flavor on it. I'm gonna add some garlic powder. Even though we added the whole garlic cloves, I still add garlic powder. That's because it's like my seasoning staple. I've got some black pepper that we're gonna add. A seasoning that Nigerians do use a lot of is thyme. It is a staple. Well, from what I've learned with Nigerian cooking, mostly from my husband, thyme is like a staple that they put in the stew. You put it in beans, like you use thyme. So I'm going to add some thyme, probably a couple of, probably like 1 tablespoon of thyme. And again, I'm going to re-season this once I have my beans, put my beans in, just because it's going to need more seasoning. And at this point, like, you should be smelling it, and it smells so good. So making the Nigerian beans is actually the first Nigerian recipe that I cooked, and I surprised my husband. I was determined. I was like, I'm going to make something Nigerian because we have been married, but right before we were married a year, and I hadn't made anything Nigerian. He did all the Nigerian cooking, like when we had stew, he's made egusi, beans, everything. He cooked all the Nigerian food, and I ate it because I liked it, but I just never tried cooking it because I was intimidated. I was like, I'm going to make beans. So I made it. So Nigerians eat rice with pretty much everything. Like, you're going to be eating rice. So I made rice with my beans. So when I bring it to him, I made rice, beans, and plantain. I brought it to him. He was surprised. He was like, wait a minute, why is there rice? I was like, because it's rice and beans. He was like, we don't eat rice with this. And I was like, well, I don't know. You got rice, you're going to eat it. And then he called me after he ate and was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So today I will be eating these beans with rice. If you're Nigerian watching this, no, it might look weird, but try it. It's quite good. I'm just saying. So you can see this stew, like, it has oil, is not like so much on the top. The stew is mixing in well with the oil. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and add our beans. So my beans are finished. Like, if there's not a lot of water, so we're going to transfer the beans into the stew, and then we'll re-season and let cook for a little bit before it's done. Okay, so I have my beans here, so I'm just going to take this slotted spoon and another thing is, when you're cooking your stew, like, you really want to watch it, just so you make sure it doesn't start burning on the bottom, because it will start burning. So at this point, like, my seasonings in here, like, I see the thyme. It looks so good. Oh my gosh. And it smells so good too. It's good. The habanero is definitely in there. I don't even know if I need to re-season it. Every time I make the beans, I get better and better at it. So my beans did finish. I let them rest, so it was a little bit more thin, the beans. But once you let them rest, the beans soak in all that yummy stew and the oil, and so now it's perfect. So I'm going to plate it with my rice, and I'm gonna serve it with some fried plantain that I fried off camera. I just want to please again like this video, like it, subscribe to my channel. There's going to be lots of more videos coming. I know I say that in every video, and then it's several months before, but being a mom and working and everything, it's a lot. But I am here now, and I will make another one. So again, like, subscribe, share, comment below if you make this recipe, or if you've had Nigerian stew before, or any other Nigerian foods that you would like me to make. I'm more than happy to cook. I am doing so well with my Nigerian cooking. I like to watch videos and cook for my family. I love it, love it, love it. So we'll see you guys in the next video while we sit down and eat.